Every single day, the man boards up all the doors and windows of his house before nightfall. On top of that, he digs a trench dozens of meters deep all around the property. Then he fills the trench with planks of wood and soaks them in gasoline. As soon as he's done with all that, he bolts back inside the house. He reinforces the doors and windows all over again with the leftover planks. He keeps going until the entire house is completely airtight. And the reason he does all this is that once the sun sets, the outside world becomes a no-go zone for humans. But Jesse had just picked up his weapon and started loading it with ammo when his dog suddenly got all worked up. Before he could figure out what was going on, a deafening crash slammed against the front door out of nowhere. Scared out of his wits, Jesse quickly raised his weapon and took aim. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, the mysterious creature fell completely silent in an instant. It was as if it had caught a whiff of danger and fled the area. But just as Jesse let out a breath of relief, he suddenly sensed that the danger was right above his head. He heard the rapid patter of footsteps overhead, and Jesse didn't hesitate. He raised his gun and pulled the trigger, but a few shots did nothing to stop whatever it was. With no other choice, he hurled a torch into the gasoline outside. In an instant, a raging fire erupted into the sky. The wooden cabin he relied on to survive burst into a ball of flames in the blink of an eye. Seizing the chance, Jesse bolted outside, but just when it mattered most, a downpour started pouring from the sky. With nowhere to go, he huddled under a blanket and stood in the rain all night long. At the break of dawn, he returned to the cabin with a glimmer of hope, only to find nothing but smoldering ashes where it once stood. He had no choice but to head to the lighthouse to beg Nick for help. But out of nowhere, a monster lunged at him from the side of the road. After a brutal scuffle, Jesse tackled it to the ground and raised his gun to finish it off, until Nick suddenly rushed over and stopped him, yelling that the creature was his tame pet. Jesse was confused, but he lowered his gun all the same. Nick then led him back to the lighthouse, and the monster stepped forward to lick his wounds. Jesse was shocked to find it actually eased the pain a little. Staring at the creature, now as docile as a lamb, a strange feeling crept up in his chest. The afternoon rolled around in no time. Nick told Jesse the monsters feared sunlight, so the two spent the day building fortifications, and when night fell, they stood guard at the lighthouse door with their weapons. But as the horde of monsters closed in, thick and fast, Jesse froze in terror and fled back into the lighthouse, leaving Nick to face the charging creatures all alone. He had no idea how much time passed before a bucket of cold water jolted him awake. The monsters outside were gone. Nick warned him he'd throw him out for good if he ever did that again. Jesse knew he meant business, and he didn't dare hold back anymore. That night, he grabbed his weapon and stepped up to guard the door on his own. But he never saw it coming. By the time Jesse realized something was wrong, it was already too late. The heavy steel door slammed shut in the blink of an eye. He was left all alone outside to fend off the monsters by himself. When dawn broke and Nick lifted the steel door, he stared in shock to see Jesse had somehow survived against all odds. It completely changed Nick's opinion of him, and he finally saw Jesse as a true partner. From that day on, the two buried a hatchet and stood side by side on the front lines, fighting together against the tide of monsters that came with the night. Day in and day out, the endless battle left both their minds numb. But on this particular day, they made a bizarre discovery. The relentless waves of attacks had stopped without a trace. They thought the monsters had finally thrown in the towel, unaware it was merely the calm before the storm. In the next split second, a monster lunged out of nowhere and tackled Jesse to the ground. He fought tooth and nail and managed to take it down, but more monsters had already swarmed up the lighthouse walls. With disaster looming, Jesse made a bold call. He set off the explosives he planted all around the lighthouse. Smoke and shrapnel tore through the structure in a deafening blast, and the ferocious assault ground to a halt right then and there. The next day, the two set about cleaning up the battlefield. When Nick spotted any surviving monsters, he gunned them down without a second thought. But when Jesse caught sight of their eerily human-like faces, a jumble of conflicting emotions welled up in his chest for no reason. He made up his mind to try and get both sides to lay down their hatred, to reach for that faint glimmer of hope for peaceful coexistence. After that, Jesse headed to the beach, scarred and stained by the endless bloodshed. He arranged small stones in a perfect circle and placed a tiny boat, a symbol of friendship, right in the center. The ocean waters began to churn for no apparent reason, and the monsters slowly stepped onto the shore. Through Jesse's earnest, desperate pleas, they seemed to truly sense his goodwill, and gradually let their guard down. But just as peace seemed within reach, a flare suddenly streaked across the sky with a shrill whine. It was Nick, back at the lighthouse, who'd launched the attack. Chaos erupted in an instant, and the monsters fled back into the sea in a panic. Blinded by anger, Jesse stormed up the lighthouse to confront him, and the two fell into a brutal brawl. But in that moment, the monsters descended upon them once more, a raging horde. Facing certain death, Nick finally saw the light. He made the ultimate choice, sacrificing his own life to end the endless carnage. From that day on, the island finally found the long-lost peace it had craved, and Jesse went on to live an extraordinary life, side by side with the monsters.